Hi, I'm Philip Shepard. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this amazing once-in-a-lifetime conference, and especially to the Meditation and Breathwork channel, which I'm proud to be sponsoring because meditation and breathwork are essential to my teachings. I'm the founder of the Embodied Present Process, or TEP, which is based on my 2 books and is taught worldwide. And here's one thing I believe about meditation and breathwork. You limit your experience of both if you imagine that your mind is just the thoughts in your head. Your mind permeates your every cell. Every stirring of energy within your body is an expression of it. So, if you wish to calm your mind, the most direct route is to develop the skills that enable you to feel the body's energy and ground it in the spaciousness of the present. That's what my work is about. If that appeals to you, I hope you'll check out my 2 presentations, one on this channel and one on the main stage. You might also be interested in a special offer exclusive to the Embodiment Conference to listen to one of my embodied meditations for yourself for free. You can find a link to the special offer in the description of this presentation or in the show notes. And now, enjoy the presentation.
So thank you to our sponsor, Philip Shepard and TEP. So Anders, I'd love to introduce you to our audience now. Anders Olsen is one of the world's leading experts on breathing and the founder of his conscious breathing method. He once ran a half marathon with duct tape over his mouth to show the power of nasal breathing. His method evolved from his own personal experiences and research on a range of modalities, included relaxation techniques and yoga, qigong, the Buteyko method, mental training, body awareness, and also feedback from thousands of people. He's an author, a lecturer, and a teacher, and he has trained more than 1,000 conscious breathwork instructors. He says that our breathing is a direct reflection of our emotions, our thoughts, and our physical body, and that taking control of our breathing is a free and powerful way that we can practice in any situation throughout the day to improve our health. So today, Anders explains what makes good breathing and its influence on all aspects of our lives. And Anders, I'm delighted that you're here, and over to you.
Thank you very much for that nice introduction. So, in my view, I firmly believe that in our breath lies the power to change our lives. And I've been doing this now for 10 years, helping people to improve their breathing. And the question I often get, why in the world are you so obsessed about breathing? Sometimes I consider myself a curious breathing nerd. And this has to do with my previous inner stress, where I tend to think of myself as I was born in turbo mode. Always had this racing mind. When I grew up, it was all about competition, timing things. When I biked to school, I had 5 stop times, and it was all about setting new records. But obviously, I couldn't set the record from start to finish. But then I could always try to set a record from stop time 2 to 4, for example. I timed eating breakfast. It took me 30 seconds to take in a bowl of cereal. I even timed going to the toilet. So I was very, very much in my mind. And one example of this was when I was 13, I figured I wanted to start doing push-ups and sit-ups. And my record in 1 month was 25,000 push-ups, 50,000 sit-ups, and it took me only 35 seconds to do 50 push-ups. And since I didn't have any tools to unlock the turbo, this have followed me in the even until I discovered breathing. And I tend to think that most part of my life I spent making myself stressed out and also making people around me stressed out. And if you've ever been stressed out, which I'm sure you have, you may have noticed that fear and worry are not far away. So those have also been my companions for most part of my life. Also, I had a short fuse and very poor self-confidence. I also had physical stuff going on, like I had a lot of allergies. I used to, especially in the summer, scratch my skin so hard, so it started to bleed. I had a lot of restless sleep, sleepwalking, nightmares, sweating. I used to wake up with my feet on my pillow, telling me that I was twisting and turning a lot, etc., etc. So I've tried to find different ways to get out of this turbo mode. I mean, I love my turbo. I don't want to be without it, but sometimes it could be really nice to be able to unlock it, right? To be able to slow down at will. And by far the most important tool I found is our breath. Even though I've improved my sleeping habits, working habits, eating habits, etc. And maybe you've heard of Viktor Frankl. He survived 3 years in concentration camp. He has written the book Man's Search for Meaning. He was able to find a meaning surviving under these horrible conditions. And one thing he said that I really, really like: between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that is exactly what I have found in the conscious breath. It has helped me to open up the window of opportunity to react differently to incoming stimuli. So before, when some stimuli come my way, someone pushed a button, I reacted with the behavior I had learned as a child. I reacted with fear, with worry, with stress, with anger, etc., etc. But I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying that breathing has changed my life. I feel nowadays I'm no longer slave to these learned behaviors. Someone pushed a button that 15 years ago led to a fear reaction. Now, well, it doesn't really bother me. I'm in charge. I'm able to, the breath, the conscious breath, the low and slow and rhythmic breath have helped me to find the time necessary to react differently. And if you react differently over and over, you will start to create new patterns, right? So that is what can happen. And I believe that the reason for this is that our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical body, they all surf on the breath. We can all agree that with no breath, there is nothing, right? There are no thoughts, no emotions, no muscle movements. So that's how I view it. If we have good breathing, we lay the foundation for good thoughts, balanced emotions, and good actions, and a body that doesn't stop us from doing what we want. Okay, let's do an exercise so you don't sit here and fall asleep. I want you to, if you're sitting down, adopt an erect posture. And I want you to follow my instructions clearly. Preferably do not make a mistake. You should focus towards the camera, towards me, during the whole exercise, and your head should be still during the whole exercise. So it's kind of a little bit to perform. Are you ready? So follow my instructions. Okay, let's start. Look up, look down, look to the left, look to the right, look up, head should be still. Look down, look up, look to the left, look to the right, look up, look down, head should be still, look up, look to the left. And how are you breathing now? That was the purpose with exercise. Anyone, maybe hold your breath or breathe fast, shallow. There is a tendency whenever we engage in something, concentrate or performing, we kind of tense up, and it will affect our breathing. Usually when I do this exercise live, 2/3 of the audience would say that, yeah, that their breathing got totally screwed up. And a few signs of impaired breathing are that you're using your mouth, that you breathe shallowly, fast, irregular, unrhythmic, noisy, you take big breaths, your breathing is tense, it's labored, the exhalation is short, you have a slumped posture, and maybe you experience some of these poor breathing, impaired breathing habits when we did this little exercise, just to show that our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, our posture, our actions, they are all mirrored, reflected in our breath. So when we are afraid, we will have a breathing pattern that is afraid, sort of. When we are stressed out, we will have a breathing pattern that is stressed out. So a definition of being sick, in my view, is that we react to incoming stimuli with too much sympathetic, fight, flight, freeze, and too little parasympathetic, which is the rest, recovery, growth. And the impaired breathing takes us in the direction towards sympathetic. When we are overbreathing, meaning we breathe too fast, which upsets the oxygen carbon dioxide balance, we take in too much oxygen and exhale too much carbon dioxide. We may have a chaotic breathing where we tend to breathe faster in one instance and then breathe slower in another instance. We may panting when we breathe fast all the time. We may have periodic breathing, which at nighttime we call it sleep apnea, meaning we hold our breath. At daytime, I call it text message apnea, concentration apnea, or computer apnea, or almost whatever you like apnea. There is a lot of us that have a tendency to hold our breath during the day. Or we have shallow chest breathing, feel maybe that we are not breathing at all. While a definition of being healthy, it is the opposite. We react to incoming stimuli mainly with parasympathetic, rest, recovery, and growth, and less sympathetic, fight, flight, freeze. So that is what the conscious breath can help us with, to take us in the parasympathetic direction. So let's look at the 7 habits of conscious breathing. The first one is the nose. Good breathing starts in the nose. The mouth is for eating, talking. The nose is for breathing. If we want to twist it a little bit, we can say that it is just as natural to inhale through the mouth as it is to eat through the nose. Maybe it's going a little bit too far, but you understand my point. So if we look at the nose here, we realize unless evolution have completely lost it and created a huge space in the cranium for the nose that is completely unnecessary, because the nose is only there to smell the flowers. Well, or actually the nose, it tells us this huge space that it occupies. I mean, the part that we can see and touch and feel, that is the small part. The big part is inside our cranium. And I mean, on this picture, it almost looked like we could fit half a brain into the nasal cavity. Well, it lies a little bit, but still we have these important functions in our cranium, right? Like eyes and the nervous system. And obviously, if the nose wasn't as important, the nose could have much lesser space, so that could be more room for the brain. But this picture really tells us that the nose is very important. So what it does is that it prepares the air for the lungs. The advantages with nasal breathing is that it warms and moistens the air, and it filters out bacteria and viruses and other particles. Research suggests that we inhale up to 100 billion particles in a single day. More so if we live in a city where the air is polluted, or if we spend a lot of time indoor where the air quality isn't that good. So imagine taking in that air with all these particles, which includes virus and bacteria. Imagine taking in that unfiltered through the mouth. Also dry and cold air goes through the mouth, in the airways, and down into the lungs. It is like having to choose between eating a raw chicken, unless we're vegans or vegetarians, and a prepared chicken. I think most of us would choose the prepared chicken. That's what the lungs have to choose between. The air that comes via the mouth is in a more raw fashion, while through the nose, it is filtered, it is warmed, it is humidified. So nasal breathing is super important. Good breathing starts in the nose, but it doesn't end there. So the second habit is that the breathing should be low. What I mean by that is that we should use our diaphragm, which is attached to the 6 lowest ribs. You can feel it if you touch the bottom of your ribs. And the diaphragm is our major breathing muscle. Together with the heart, those are the only 2 muscles that never rest. They're constantly active. The heart to pump the blood, and the diaphragm to move the air in and out of the lungs. So when we inhale, the diaphragm moves down, and when we exhale, the diaphragm goes up. And here we can see it, how it works. You can clearly see when the diaphragm operates as it's supposed to, it will massage the organs in the abdomen. Compared to if we have this shallow breathing, this movement will not occur there. So the massage of the organs, the stomach, the liver, the intestines, it won't happen, and they will function not so good. So the diaphragmatic breath is very, very important. And further, we can see that a large part of the airways, they're just like a tube, like a snorkel, if you like. So when we take the air in via the mouth, or preferably via the nose, there is a long way of just transporting the air. There is no action. The air shall reach the alveoli, as you can see in the image to the right. They're like grapes. They look like grapes. And that's where the action is. So there is, first you have the trachea, and then it's divided into 2, 1 to each lung, but then it should divide another 22 times before the air reaches the alveoli. So each time there is the airways are divided, they get smaller and smaller, and it's harder and harder for the air to pass. And the thing is that most of these alveoli, they are located at the bottom of the lungs. And also most of the blood, because we do have bloods in our lungs, and the reason, the idea with the alveoli, that is where the gas exchange happened. That's the action, and they are connected to the blood. So the air we inhale containing a lot of oxygen, the oxygen in the alveoli is transported over to the blood. And most of the alveoli is located at the bottom of the lungs, and also most of the blood is located there. So we have 10 times as much blood at the bottom of the lungs compared to at the top of the lungs. So it's far more efficient to breathe in this low fashion. Please note that I don't use the word deep, because most people, when we say deep, they associate it with a big breath. And in my view, that is not optimum, which we will talk about in a second. So in normal breathing, we have air circulating in all the parts of the lungs, which is what we want. But in shallow breathing, the air circulates more in the upper parts. So we already talked about it's inefficient, but not only that, it will also create an environment in the lungs where stale air will be trapped, and the particles we inhale will also be trapped. bacteria and viruses and other particles, they will get trapped in the lungs, causing inflammations. And over time, if we continue with this shallow breathing, this inflammation, they will become chronic, and eventually we will get a diagnosis of COPD maybe, or lung emphysema, which means the lung tissues have been permanently destroyed. And that's when those inflammations become chronic, and over time they will get destroyed. So mouth breathing actually promotes shallow breathing. And the more raw fashion taking in the air creates more narrow, inflamed airways, leading to more shallow breathing, while the nose is designed to drive the air all the way down to the bottom of the lungs. So we won't go through the other habits, but it should also be slow and small. We should have an erect posture so that we give room for the diaphragm to work. Our breath should be rhythmic compared to the breath hold that many of us engage in. And we should also have a quiet breathing. And what I mean by that is, for example, when we sleep, we may snore. That's not a quiet breathing. Every sound we make means that we move air in and out of the lungs. Or at daytime, we may we sigh and we huff and puff and make all kinds of sounds. And that means that we are breathing. And those breaths are not particularly good. So more than anything, the idea with conscious breathing is your breathing pattern outside of the yoga mat, outside of meditation. It is about your 1,000 breaths you take each hour. How can you take more and more of them in line with these 7 good habits? So when we have stressed breath, we tend to be more in survival mode. We are separated. Our cells feel separated. We feel separated from each other. We end up in more conflicts, fear, worry, diseases. We may have poor sleep, low energy. So when we can move and take more and more of those 1,000 breaths in a more harmonious way, we will experience better sleep, more energy, better health, courage, happiness. We are able to cooperate more, less conflicts. We're able to learn more. We're basically in growth mode. Okay, so let's do another exercise. Follow your breath. So this time I'm not trying to psych you up as I did with the first exercise. This time it's just about to follow your breath. So please sit comfortable. You may adopt an erect posture without tensing up. Try to remain relaxed, and you put one hand on your stomach and one hand on your chest. Please close your eyes to close off some of the stimuli that reach the brain via the eyes. And just follow your breath. And just pay attention to if you're breathing fast or slow. If your breathing is unrhythmic or rhythmic. If you're breathing through your mouth or through your nose. If you feel a bit stressed out when following your breath, or if it makes you calm and relax. If you're breathing higher up in your chest or lower down into your midriff. Notice if your breathing is quiet or if it's a little bit noisy. If you want to, please share your experience in the chat box. Did you get more stressed out or did you feel calmer? When I do the live presentations, normally I would say 3/4, they feel more relaxed. And then I tell them, well, this is how easy it could be, right? We're a bit stressed out, we're afraid, we're worried, and we turn to our breath and we are able to calm down. Some people doesn't notice much, and then there are always a couple of people that feel a little bit more stressed. And then I believe that my comment to that is that usually then either you are a bit of a performer, and now we just talked about what makes up good breathing, and you try to get it all in your head and try to get that all happen at once, and it's just overwhelming, and you get stressed out and you get tensed, and so the exercise may tense you up. Or it could indicate in general that you may haven't paid any attention to your breath at all before, and you may need to do some breathing retraining to improve it. Okay, so why conscious breathing? 4 important reasons. First, to get more energy. We all know that if we stop breathing, we die, right? Nothing new there. But why do we die if we stop breathing? We all know that as well. It's not a trick question. It's lack of oxygen. We are so extremely dependent upon oxygen that we are, if we stop breathing after just a few minutes, we are not able to survive, most of us. But then this question is a bit harder. Why is oxygen so vital? Why are we so dependent upon oxygen? It is to produce energy. Just like this city has an enormous need for energy, so does our body. And we mainly use 2 types of fuel. We use glucose to convert it to energy, and we can do that without oxygen, and we get 2 ATP from a glucose molecule. ATP is our energy currency. It could be likened to money in our wallet. A lot of ATP is like a lot of money, which means we can buy the clothes we want, we can live in an apartment or a house. But without oxygen, we don't get a lot of ATP. With oxygen, we get up to 16 times as much ATP. So without oxygen, converting glucose to energy is very, very inefficient. Although it is fast, so whenever we are a bit stressed out, we tend to turn to glucose and produce energy without oxygen, which is called fermentation. With oxygen, it happens in the mitochondria, and it's called combustion. And so we use glucose to produce energy, and the other energy source that we mainly use is fat. And guess what? Fat cannot be burnt without oxygen. So if we have poor breathing, we deprive our body slightly of the oxygen. And fat contains a lot of energy, up to 107 ATP from one fat molecule. So we really want to tap into our fat reserves. We have about 50 times as much fat stored in our body compared to sugar or glucose, because fat is much more efficient to store energy as. So if you want to store energy, if you have 1 kilo of fat and you want to store the same amount of energy as glucose, you need 6 kilo of glucose. That's why we store the main energy as fat, and we want to access that to produce energy. But when we have impaired breathing, we slightly close the door to our fat reserves. And all in all, this means that we get lack of energy. Just like if we were able to pull the plug of this city, it would be chaos, right? The street lights wouldn't work, the shower wouldn't work, your toilet wouldn't work, your freeze, your oven, your TV, nothing would work. There will be an energy crisis in this city, and it would be in our body as well. And luckily, we don't die if we have impaired breathing, but slowly depriving our body of this life-sustaining oxygen means that we increase the chaotic state in our body. Over time, it will create an energy crisis. So when we say that we die when we stop breathing because lack of oxygen, it is actually because lack of energy. Okay, so a second thing is the importance of conscious breathing is to get better sleep. And in this study, they plugged the nose of the participants. They were healthy participants, and all participants began to snore when their nose was blocked. Already the first night, one even developed sleep apnea, so he was holding his breath. And the other participants, they all said that they had slept really poorly. And I participated in a study at Stanford University in the US a couple of years ago. We did a mouth versus conscious breathing study. So for 10 days, if you see the picture to the right, I look awful and I feel awful. We blocked our nose for 10 days and 10 nights. And it was really a quite awful experience. I noticed how my stress level increased. It was like I was turning back to my previous life when I was more stressed out. I started to have sugar cravings, and I know all about sugar cravings. Just as I think that I have a black belt in stress, I know all about stress. I also tended to have a lot of sugar cravings, and that came in the beginning of the study. When we blocked the nose, I had no sugar cravings whatsoever. The last 4 days, I had between 7 and 8 from a scale from 1 to 10 in sugar cravings. So the last 4 days, I ate ice cream and chocolate bars. The last 2 days, I also topped it up with pizza and beer. And I don't drink a lot of alcohol at all, and I don't eat a lot of pizzas and similar, but it felt like, don't take my pizza or my beer, they're mine. And I'm quite sure if I would have continued, I would have gone for pizza and beer every day. That was how I felt. I also felt stupid several times, really surprised how stupid I was. And this was all due to mouth breathing. So the idea, the thing we wanted to test with the study was, can poor breathing take our health downwards, and can conscious breathing bring it back up again? And that was exactly what happened. But the thing that affected me most was the sleep. And we measured, we filmed ourselves. We could see that we slept more restless. I was up 4, 5, 6 times every night, going to the toilet or just waking up because I felt so restless. And at some point, I didn't even want to go to bed because I knew it's going to be a horrible experience. So anyway, we also measured our snoring sound. And you see here the snore score, first night 62, and then 45, 43, etc. So on average, my snore score was 50, and I snored on average 3 hours per night. You can see the following 4 nights looks very similar. And the last 2 nights, 62 and 55. The higher the bars and the more yellow, the more snoring. The more yellow, yellow is loud. So quite a lot of loud snoring here. And then you can see on the last one, Thursday, September 13, then we removed these horrible things from our nose so that we can start using our nose again. So what do you think happened with the next night? Do you think I snored less or more? You can see here, Friday, September 14th, the next night, virtually no snoring at all. I think my snore score was 2, so I went from 3 hours to less than 10 minutes, just like that, in an instant. Look the same here. And you see on Thursday, September 20th, I had 1, and Friday, 21st, I had 1, and then suddenly I had 11, and then 1 again in the snore score. And why did I get 11 suddenly? I mean, percentage-wise, that's a huge increase. I got that because I wanted to try what happens now if I eat chocolate, drink a beer, have a pizza, and eat ice cream. Well, it immediately affected my sleep. And I tried this a number of times. So if I eat too late, if I eat too much, if I eat sugar, if I drink alcohol, if I exercise too hard, if I stress too much at work, it will affect my sleep. And obviously, if I have poor sleep, it will affect the next day. So we may end up in a vicious cycle. So whenever we say we have poor sleep, we should also consider our breathing, because they're really, really tied together. So if we have poor breathing during daytime, we will most likely have poor breathing during the nighttime, and then it will affect our sleep negatively. One woman, she contacted me, Katarina. She said, I was very, very skeptical. I've tried everything for the last 30 years. I've had so poor sleep. I've been waking up 5-6 times every single night, and it's detrimental to my health and my energy. I just drag myself through the day. And when she contacted me, she said, I've slept more full nights in the past 4 weeks than I've done in total in the last 30 years. That's quite amazing. So what did she do then? Well, she taped her mouth. That is something I've been doing myself for the last 10 years now, and I can highly recommend it. You can tape it like the woman on the picture alongside, or you can tape from your nose to your chin and just have a smaller piece of tape. That ensures that you do nasal breathing while sleeping, and it can actually change your life. A third reason why conscious breathing is important is to calm down a racing mind. In normal breathing, they measure the brain at a subject, and the more colorful, the more activity. It measures the glucose metabolism. The higher the metabolism, the more activity. So in normal breathing, there is normal brain activity. And then after only 1 minute of hyperventilation, there is very low brain activity. And the reason for that will be evident in a moment, because the problem with impaired breathing is that we have a tendency to overbreathe. We take in too much oxygen and too little carbon dioxide. And we may think that, well, does that really matter? Because we know that oxygen is so important, and carbon dioxide is just a waste gas anyway, isn't it? But that is actually not true. In my view, there is nothing that is 100% good and nothing that is 100% bad. It's all about balance. We all know that water is good for us, since we are made up of about 60-70% water. So if I don't drink any water in a week, that's a big stress to my body. But at the same time, if I drink 10 liters of water in a day, that's stress. That's too much, right? So it's the same with our breathing. In every instance, whatever activity we do, our breathing should reflect that activity. And we have one breathing pattern when we sit on the sofa, and we have another one, a much faster one, if we're out walking or jogging. And the idea, one of the main function of the breathing, is to keep the balance between carbon dioxide that we take in from the outside and oxygen that we take in from the outside, and carbon dioxide that is produced in our body. And when we overbreathe, we tend to take in too much oxygen and we exhale too much carbon dioxide. And that is why I don't use the word deep breathing, because when we take these big breaths, there is a risk that we upset this balance, because every amount of air we inhale, we will also exhale. And we exhale about 100 times as much carbon dioxide as we inhale. And one of the main properties of carbon dioxide is that it helps to relax and widen the blood vessels. So when we overbreathe, we get lack of carbon dioxide and we constrict the blood vessels. So that explains the picture we saw earlier of the brain. When we overbreathe, the blood vessels constrict and there is less blood going to the brain. so thereby the activity goes down. And this knowledge is actually used in brain surgery. If you do brain surgery, you want as much space as possible for your instruments, right? So usually the person going through the surgery is sedated and in a ventilator, and they put the ventilator on hyperventilation so that more carbon dioxide is exhaled, so that less blood goes through the brain, and the brain then starts to shrink so that there is more room to do the surgery. Of course, that is very good in brain surgery, not so good in our daily life if we have a problem we want to solve, right? So we also know that racing mind and fear and worry, they are closely connected. So if you have a panic attack and come to the hospital, you will get a bag to breathe in and out through. And as I said before, 100 times more carbon dioxide is exhaled compared to when we inhale. So when you exhale in a bag, you will then rebreathe some of that exhaled air. So you're in a panic attack because you are, one of the reasons for that is you are hyperventilating, constricting the blood vessels to the brain. The stressed out brain has low blood, low oxygen, low nutrients. And when you then breathe into the bag, you increase carbon dioxide, so the blood vessels open up, and the stressed panic brain will start to receive more blood, more oxygen, and more nutrients, and thereby it can start to relax. And if you talk to a flight attendant, they know that whenever we get a person that is afraid of flying, breathe in a bag always works. We can get that person to calm down. And if we think about it, the major difference between these two states, a person that is in relaxation or a person that is in stress, panic, what is the major difference? At the end of the day, it doesn't mean that much whether the person to the left has not slept while the other person have slept very well, or one have good breathing, good eating habits, and the other one is eating junk food, or if one just going through a divorce and the other is is deeply in love. The major difference between those two states is carbon dioxide. When we are relaxed, we tend to breathe slower, meaning that we retain more carbon dioxide in our body. We don't exhale as much carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is our natural tranquilizer, while when we are more stressed out, when we are more in a state of panic, then we have a tendency to breathe faster, and we then lower the carbon dioxide pressure. So we can basically move ourselves in the direction towards relaxation just by taking control of our breathing and retain more carbon dioxide. So when we engage in those 7 breathing habits, we close our mouth, breathe through the nose, we breathe low and slow and small and rhythmically. We will move towards parasympathetic, towards relaxation, towards recovery, towards health. While when we engage in the opposite, shallow, fast, unrhythmic breathing, we will lower the carbon dioxide pressure in our body and move more in the direction of stress. So basically, just by changing our breathing, we can move between those states.
Anders, just 5 minutes to question time.
Thank you. So the fourth reason for conscious breathing is better sports performance. This woman, Ulrika, she exercised 6 to 8 times per week. So she loves exercising, and she was a bit shocked when she noticed that with nose breathing, she could cut 10 minutes on her 10-kilometer run in 6 weeks. It took her only 6 weeks to go from 55 minutes to 45 minutes on her jog. And she also noticed better sleep and more energy during the day. So as mentioned in the introduction, I ran a half marathon with taped mouth a few years ago, just to show that it is possible, and to start have people start thinking about their breathing, because most people who exercise, they have no clue about their breathing. So of course, people during the race, they thought I was kind of stupid, but yeah, when I got a chance to talk to them and afterwards, they got really interested. And nowadays, it's starting to become more and more popular. So if you think about it, a horse running twice as fast as Usain Bolt, have a weight of up to 500 kilo, is able to oxygenate all these muscles while breathing only through the nose. This guy, he participated in a study. He used to have the Swedish record in triathlon, 8 hours, 15 minutes. So he was super fit. In the study, we taped the nose one instance, and the other instance we taped the nose. So with mouth breathing, his pulse was 155. With nose breathing, it was only 139. That is a 10% difference, and it's a huge thing for such a fit athlete. And also, after biking, while only breathing through my nose, I felt incredibly relaxed and harmonious, telling us again that the increase of carbon dioxide is what helps us to get into that harmonious state. So to summarize, 4 important reasons for conscious breathing is to get more energy, better sleep, calm down a racing mind, and improve your fitness level. I have written a book called Conscious Breathing. I have made a breathing retrainer, the relaxator, that gives a resistance on the out breath to help you achieve this low and slow and rhythmical breath. I have a product called Sleep Tape to tape your mouth at night, and I have trained more than 1,000 breathing instructors. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening and open up for a question or two. You can find more info at consciousbreathing.com or at Facebook. The group is called Conscious Breathing. Okay.
That's wonderful, Anders. Yeah, so if you're happy to stop sharing screen.
Yep.
And we have got a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to pick some. So a few people have been asking about breathing techniques they've come across that involve breathing through the mouth. And they'd love you to speak to that if it's, what is that about?
Yeah, I mean, there are tens of, there are hundreds of different breathing techniques to achieve different states. And a lot of them are actually about forceful breathing. And when we do that, we tend to get an adrenaline rush, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are a number of testimonials from people saying that they do different pranayama breathing or Wim Hof breathing or Kundalini yoga, where they engage in overbreathing and they feel that it has a great effect on the body. My only thing is to when you evaluate whether it works well for you or not, is to see what it does for you long term. The short term effect, we can all agree to that who have tried it, that it could alter our state, put us in a different state. But I think more importantly than long term is more important than short term is the long term effect. So that's my advice when you engage in these different exercises. Take a step back and see, does it help you long term?
Okay. And just checking the time. This is an interesting question. It's about wearing face masks in our COVID times. Gabriella's asking, I tend to panic when having to wear face masks, which are now compulsory. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for me?
Yeah, I do. I mean, in my country, Sweden, it's not mandatory with face masks, so I haven't that much experience, but I have tried for educational purposes a number of times. And I notice when I put the face mask on, it gets a little harder to breathe, and that's because you trap some of the carbon dioxide in the when you exhale, just like the bag breathing. So a lot of people tend to open their mouth when they use the bag, and that really means then that the bag, it's sorry, the mask itself will take you in a sympathetic direction, meaning that it's probably does more harm than good. So if you want it to be beneficial, you should really try to maintain a closed mouth. And for some people that could be hard, but if you are able to, it could actually act as a really good breathing retrainer, the mask. But it depends on where your starting point is, how good or how impaired your breathing are when you start wearing the mask. But my advice is that to try to keep your mouth closed under the mask. And if you need to, maybe you can find some breaks here and there and take a few breaths without the mask.
Thank you. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions about exhalation.
Mm-hmm.
So people seem to be getting that you breathe in through the nose, and does it matter about breathing out? Does that have to be through the nose as well, or can
In
it
my
be through the
view,
mouth?
yeah. In my view, it has a very important function, because when we inhale, the nose gets a little colder, a little drier, and the particles that we inhale, they're trapped there. When we exhale, the air comes from the lungs, where we have body temperature, it's warm, and it's 100% humidified. So the air coming from the lungs, when we exhale through the nose, they will rewarm and remoisten the nose, and they will also, the particles that got trapped on the inhale, they will be following the air out with the exhale. So in my view, yes, it's important to use both the inhale and exhale through the nose. But again, there are many different exercises that teach us different things.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for one more. I'll group them together. It's about certain conditions. So somebody's asked about asthma, and somebody else has asked about headaches and neuralgia. Are there what suggestions, breathing suggestions, do you have for those?
Yeah, I mean, you can look, there are a number of testimonials at the website, and there are also articles about asthma. And so for example, with asthma, we have a tendency to overbreathe, to breathe shallow. If you were able to measure your breath prior to an asthma attack, you will probably notice that it's fast and shallow, and basically it's trying to do the opposite. And the key is to close your mouth and prolong your exhalation slightly, just slightly. When you prolong it slightly, you will then start to slow down your breathing. You will create a more rhythmic breathing, and your following inhale will reach lower down into your lungs. So with the prolonged exhalation, you will activate the diaphragm.
Okay, I'm going to squeeze just one more question if you can answer this really quickly. It's really
Okay,
interesting from Elena. She says it's about yawning. She's saying, could you comment on nature of yawning? Because there we're grasping air with our mouth. So pretty curious what you think about that.
I mean, yawning in general is a sign of overbreathing, because when we yawn, we take a big breath. So a big breath in means a big breath out. So we exhale carbon dioxide with the out breath. And if we yawn, I mean, a yawn here and there is obviously not a big deal. But if we have a tendency to do it, it could be a sign of overbreathing. Yawn as well as sighing a lot is also a sign of overbreathing. So we also could yawn because we have tensions in our jaw. So it's a way to release tensions. So it could also be a sign, for example, that we're eating too soft food and not chewing enough. So we have built up tensions in our jaw, which is built for a lot of activity.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for all the questions. This has obviously been a lot of interest, and there's a lot of appreciation in the chat.
Thank you.
Yes, but what did I particularly enjoy? I think it was the computer and text message apnea. I really noticed myself holding my breath when I'm doing that. And I also noticed that it goes with a certain posture of stiffening in order to get things done and quickly. So I think that's going to help me stay more alert. So thank you very much for a stimulating talk. And I'm going to come back to you in a few minutes for your closing top tip on how to be more embodied. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the talk. And there's so much there. Just to say, it is free for 48 hours from today to listen again if you want to go through the material that Anders has shared today. And in terms of continuing the learning, which is what this conference is all about, we have the Facebook group that you can join, and you also have coffee break time, breakout rooms. It's all on the website, and you can meet up with people and share your ideas and yeah, carry on your learning that way. The other thing we have is the conference library that you can buy. So this recording and all of the others, and it's a really, really great structured way to learn if that's what you like, at your own pace, in your own time, and you can find everything that you want. There are audio recordings for learning on the move. There are learning lists and recommendations. So for personal and professional development, I'm finding that all these presentations have been really invaluable. And if you're interested in that, after the conference, it's double the price. So have a look on the website if that's something you may be interested in. It can also be a good way to say your appreciation for people who put the conference on. And it's also a great way to support people who couldn't otherwise take part because the conference is put on for free. If you're a trauma professional, we really want to support this work. So if you feel you can't afford the cost of the library, email us for a discount. And the other thing you may be interested in is donating. We have some charities that the Embodiment Conference supports. So you may want to donate to the charities, and you may also want to donate to the Embodiment Conference to help us put on events like this. Okay, so we have 1 minute. We're on time. Anders, what would be your one takeaway for our audience today on how to be more embodied?
Clearly, for me, it's to close your mouth and engage in a slightly longer exhalation so that you will create this low and slow and rhythmic breath, which helps you to take the elevator down from your mind and into your body and synchronize your mind brain with your heart brain, with your gut brain.
Thank you. Mind
Thank
brain,
you.
heart brain, gut brain. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll just announce the next session on this channel is Juliet Adams, who is going to be talking about what is intention and why does it matter. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. If you like this video and want more people to find out about it, please hit the like button below. Your daily breathing habits lay the foundation for your health, energy and harmony. It is a real superpower, and to unleash it and thereby reach your full potential, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just press the conscious breathing symbol to the right of me. Also remember to press the bell button below the video to receive alerts every time I go live or post new videos. You may also want to click on the link in the description below the video to receive 2 free chapters of my book, Conscious Breathing. Thank you so much for watching. Breathe better and feel better.